We're the wonderful with strange bones. That's me. And so, welcome to our live again. And as you know, we are going around the world checking out different countries and cultures and looking at the paranormal and supernatural that is out there to see what we can find, to see if there are any commonalities that might show a certain amount of logic to all of these things that are out there. And hey there to Noodle. Welcome, welcome. Glad you could join us. And we've been doing some interesting places all around. Much thanks for the likes. We always love likes. Um, but for today, we are back in Africa. And we have decided for today's live, we are going to be talking about a country that is quite close to mine heart, as it is, in fact, the country of my birth, and that is Zambia. So, hey there to Hisham and Luba. Welcome, welcome. So, Zambia, what can we say about Zambia? Zambia is a very warm country that lies in what is known as the Copper Belt, that area across the middle of Africa that is known for very high quantities of copper in the soil. It is a particularly lovely place in many ways and incredibly fertile, but it is very landlocked. Its only water that we can say is notable is, of course, in the rivers, and the most notable one, of course, is Victoria Falls, known as the Smoke That Thunders, and this does in fact play into part of what we shall be discussing today, because absolutely you will find that the falls are important. Now, I myself, of course, was born nowhere near the falls. I was born in a tiny little village. Well, at the time it was tiny. I believe from friends that it has grown quite a bit since then. But I was born in Ndola, which is a little way off from Kitwe. And interestingly enough, there are a few good stories that come from Kitwe in terms of the paranormal and supernatural. Now, as we know, one thing that does make a difference when it comes to these stories is whether or not the local culture believes or has any sympathy for this kind of thing. And we know that in Zambia, of course, the veneration of ancestors is important, and therefore there's quite a lot of ghosts and things, but generally they are simply accepted as part of daily living in a great many ways, um, rather than anything particular or special. Unless, of course, they are those noteworthy things that might be suitably frightening. And the first story on our list is the tale of Rosemary Chibanda. And this is very much noticed in this particular um, examination because she is very much vengeful. We will also touch across the Nyami Nyami and a number of haunted buildings and houses, as well as a few other interesting apparitions which uh, matter in that regard. Now, as we begin, just a quick reminder to everyone, we only have one rule on our channel. Hey there to Aussie van Rensburg, welcome, welcome. And that rule, of course, is be polite. You don't have to agree, you do not have to believe, and all comments, positive and negative, are absolutely welcome, but politeness is required, and we will put the boot to those who do not follow that one rule. Because after all, it does matter. But we do have a number of interesting stories to share tonight. So like, subscribe, join, become part of the family, join the fan club, and why not? And do all the good things that help support the channel so that we can keep it going. Now, we are going to start off with the story of Rosemary Chibanda. Now, Rosemary was, shall we say, a lady of negotiable affection, as it were, and quite famous apparently, believed to have originated from the southern province, but operated in Lusaka and in Kabwe as a waitress. She died a particularly horrific death under mysterious circumstances at the hands of men. She then appeared again as a ghost and went for an all-out carnage on any man who fell prey to her. So it seems that revenge was the underlying motive in that regard. Now, as the story is told, that she had developed a particular hatred for all men because of what happened to her in real life. And the ghost would pose as a beautiful prostitute, and then the unsuspecting clients would engage her and go off with her for a ride, and then she would turn into this slightly horrifying ghost-like creature that would suck the victim dry of blood with the precision of a vampire until they entirely died. Now, those who are lucky enough to come out with their life came out without their teeth. I wonder why she did that. During that time, there were lots of reports of sightings of this mysterious woman who had also caused a number of road traffic accidents. It sort of went like this. If you're driving in the evening or at night, then suddenly this woman would appear in the middle of the road. Now, if you hit her, then you would die. And if you managed to avoid her, you would crash and be either severely injured or die. But if you stopped and decided to pick up this beautiful woman, she would thank you for giving her a lift, but along the way she would leap on you and drain you of all your blood. Now, the ghost of Rosemary is said to have mysteriously appeared in 3 different bars that she had worked in. The first was in the Tambalala bar along Kabwe Road, not far from the Chingwera Cemetery where she was buried. The second appearance was at the Independence Bar in Emmerdale. Third appearance was in the Evening Bar in Matero, where she said to have kissed a man who lost all his teeth but lived to tell the tale. So it seemed she had not only a need to attack, but she had some kind of reason for stealing their teeth. Um, it's reported that the haunting spirit of Rosemary was finally put to rest when a number of priests held special prayers at her grave. So definitely a ghost to be avoided, and a very, very vengeful one, as we know from what we've seen around. Hey there, Green. What we've seen around about what causes a ghost to appear, there must be a great deal of emotion at the death of said person, and I think that murder counts in that regard, very much so. So, yeah, a good story right there. The next story is the ghost of Mandalena, who terrorized Kitwe in a similar fashion after, yes, again, a gruesome murder. It is said that she would often materialize in the form of a strikingly beautiful woman and then patronize some of the most popular bars and beer halls in the town of Kitwe. There were different accounts as what would happen to the men who tried to pick her up. Some would find themselves at a local cemetery waking up after having gone with her. Others went entirely insane after their encounter with the ghost, and quite a few of them were reported to have died. So, again, an angry and vengeful spirit. Now, the next one in the line is the Schooner Girl. Now, the Schooner Girl, I'm not entirely certain what a Schooner Girl really is. We might need to look that up and find out, but um, apparently stories come from schools in the southern and western provinces. One would hear footsteps in the corridor. The hostel door would open, and then footsteps followed by silence. The bigger boys would find themselves naked and wet with their clothing flung away from them uh, in the following morning, and it was quite scary. And it got so bad that the boys would not even go to the bathroom at night. One narrated how his classmate at Tungi Primary School found himself locked inside the school toilet. He cried and wailed like a scared baby and was rescued eventually. But why the Schooner Girl terrorized these schools and these boys is unknown, but apparently it happened in a number of schools on a number of occasions. Um, a case specifically in Brotzeland, we had the ghost of Mahalihali, um, which terrorized the Barotish, especially in the nearby villages of Lialu between 1974 and 1977. It was famous for its use of a bicycle. It was invisible, and it would ring the bell on the bicycle behind you or even in front of you, stop and ask you the reason why you didn't want to give way. Without wasting much time, it would begin slapping its victims, telling them it was slapping them to teach them respect. It said that the ghost of Mahalihali was looking for the one who killed him. It rested when the one who killed him eventually died. Apart from Mongu, other places it visited were Kalabo and Senanga. So it seems that the story went around and there was more than one occasion where it was apparently seen. Around the same time in Brotzeland, there was the ghost of Sikombwa, who terrorized the nearby villages of Mabumbu. It was using a motor vehicle as its mode of transport, which is an interesting one. Hey there, Ramo. Normally, it would stop around its victims, but they would see no driver. In those days, it used to be busy driving in the Barotse plains, and most especially around the Mabumbu regions at night. The ghost went to rest after it eventually killed the one it was supposedly looking for in 1977. So it seems that the ghosts here have a very specific uh, aim and are quite vengeful about it. So it seems that when ghosts appear in Zambia, um, they only really get told much about when they are angry. And this does make sense because, by and large, when you have a culture that is very much accepting of the supernatural and of ancestors and such, one tends not to have too much of an issue. It's simply a thing to be dealt with more than anything, rather than something to worry about until it really does become something to worry about. Now, comments on the story that was put up do say that they were in schools in the area where the toilet ghost seemed to hang around, and they said that they were told this story and made absolutely certain that they never went to the bathroom alone for this very reason. So this is apparently a well-known story. So now, why would we have in these tales so much vengeance and so much anger? Well, it seems that further research and stories about, for example, Rosemary Chibanda, uh, they said that one version of it, there was a falling out that Rosemary had with a client that led to her death. But popular accounts add a bit more color to it and fit especially to what might indeed be the cause of a ghost appearing. And that is that she took a lover and was very, very much in love with him, but things soured, and she met her end near one of the main highways when he ran her over, leaving her for dead. She lay there dying, feeling betrayed for a long time, cursing his name, and she never found peace in death. And when she returned uh, as a ghost, that anger carried on. And that makes a great deal of sense. So, NJ, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, stories of snakes seem to be quite popular in the Zambian view of the spirit world. And we know in many ways that snakes are representative in many of the views in Africa of the supernatural. So it's unsurprising that they hold a strong position in the stories. Um, and there are several stories that are told um, regarding ghosts and snakes of varying varieties. So one such story uh, tells of some people that were out with two workmates um, doing a field trip to the Kawamba district in the Luapula province for their company. They were out and about, and it can get very wild, of course, in parts of Zambia, away from the city centers. And they were out in a place that was particularly remote, with only a few um, small houses and things, and there were a great many animals about. And indeed, at as they were going around, and the cat is playing. It's not ghosts tonight. Um, as they were out, they were going by bicycle on a very narrow road to get to some of the more remote places, and they came across a black cobra lying in the middle of the road. They were in front of their colleagues, and so calling to them, he jumped off his bicycle and as it turned out, there was a sort of rope across the road, which, as he jumped off his bicycle and tried to stop, he tripped over. Now, his friends were riding at speed behind him, and they hit, because it was narrow, they hit his bike and the rope as well, and they moved back very quickly onto the side of this path um, to avoid the snake that they had seen. They only had minor injuries, so it wasn't serious, but they were very tired. But um, they decided that at this point, they said to themselves that they were going to stop and rest and just leave things as they were. Hopefully, the snake would go away. So after a few hours of resting, they took some courage and went to fetch their bicycles, and indeed the snake was gone. They then moved on for about 20 kilometers more to get to the government school that they were supposed to visit. And once they got there, they were offered accommodation in the government house that used to be occupied by a former head teacher. Now, they were already shaken from the snake they encountered on the trip there, and they went into the house, which had been vacant for a very long time. But as they found out, the house was haunted, and every teacher that had used it prior to them had to abandon it. But of course, they were not told this prior to, as you can imagine. Um, so there they are in this house, and he felt something was wrong in some way. Um, and he told this to his friends. Now, as it turns out, um, the one friend he was with said to him, "Listen, my wife is the daughter of the senior chief in this area, and don't worry about it. Everything's fine here. Just go to sleep." Uh, they did that, and of course, as often is the case out in the more rural areas, there's not a lot of electricity. So when it gets dark at night, it gets very dark, and very late at night, this guy woke up to a creaking sound of a door being opened, and somebody appeared to have opened the door. So he sat up to see who was trying to come in, but the door was not open. It seemed that whoever was trying to open the door was not physically opening the door and was in fact invisible. So, not too sure what to do, he covered himself with a blanket and waited a bit. Then, after a little while, he removed the blanket from his face, and there in the room with him was a ghost standing. The ghost appeared to be pale and shining, and a sort of light glowing from his head. And he says the light appeared to be like the kind of shining that you would get around the head of these stories of angels. But he was terrified, and he started to shout at the ghost, but the ghost just made more and more light. The spirit was legless, it was visible only from the waist up, and the light, which began as pure white, started to change colors. It also had wings and appeared like, as he says, an angel. He cried out in a loud voice, and suddenly it vanished. And they heard a loud noise like something large crawling across the roof. Now, I must keep in mind that roofs of these kind of houses are generally corrugated iron, so you can hear very much if something's moving on the roof. Now, they then, his friends had woken from his shouting, of course, so they all went outside to see what was going on, and they all saw the same ghost that appeared to be there. And he says that it was incredibly traumatizing. And they didn't sleep, of course, but when they told people the next day, they said that, no, you can't be right. But they found out thereafter that no person managed to stay in that house for more than 2 days before fleeing. So it seems that the story that they have was not one for them alone, but an interesting tale. Now, this is something. Thanks, Vortex. Welcome, welcome. Glad you could join us, and so much thanks for the likes. According to the stories, it seems that in Zambia, they say ghosts, particularly, do not like cigarette smoke. And if you have somebody smoking cigarettes around, the ghosts will not appear. Now, that's not a thing that I personally have come across before. So it does make me wonder if that's a thing. I don't know if anybody else has heard such a story before. I do rather like the idea that if you smoke, ghosts won't bother you, but maybe you have to smoke a very specific kind of thing. I don't know. I know that the traditional things that people do smoke very often are particular herbs rather than ordinary cigarettes. So perhaps that has something to do with it as well. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, give me a comment and let me know if you know anything about that. Now, our next ghost story comes from 2018, December 2018, in the town of Gwembe in the southern province. Um, and this is a particularly troubling story uh, in many ways, because in fact, this particular female ghost masqueraded as a nurse at the Makuyu clinic, and it is said that the ghost used to harass health workers at their homes by eating their eggs, sprinkling mealie meal across the ground, and drinking their milk. It's the first time I've encountered a ghost that eats. The story got much attention when one of the workers at the clinic managed to get a photograph of her holding a baby. A woman delivered a baby at around 8 o'clock in the afternoon, but the baby went missing, and a search for the baby was mounted by workers. And finally, around 2 in the morning, they found the alleged ghost woman holding the baby, um, and they managed to catch her. The ghost woman took the baby and laid it on a bed, but instead of going out through the workers um, that had surrounded her and forced her to give up the baby, she simply turned and walked through a wall and disappeared. Many of the workers, of course, fled in fear at the sight of this, but it seems that the baby was fine and was returned to the mother. The people said she resembled a particular health worker who had died some time back. Some people believed that the relatives could help, and they said that indeed they could identify her because she was even wearing the clothing that she was buried in, which is quite a serious story indeed. Now, in 2017, and for this one, I'm going to have to ask you guys to give me a little bit of a reminder. I'm not entirely remembering exactly when it all started. When was it that the Harry Potter movies first came out? Give me a comment if you remember. I really don't recall. Was it prior to 2017? Um, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how big the Harry Potter movies would have been in Zambia. But there you go. And again, many thanks for all the likes. You guys are amazing. But nevertheless, the next story involves a creature, and I'm going to see if I can actually put a picture up for you of this very creature right now. Uh, and you can tell me what you think this looks like. Um, because this happened in a particularly public place as well, at a mall. Um, which I find to be very interesting in that regard. Normally, such sites are not seen um, in places that public, but let's see, we will drop that there and drop that there. And let's pop this up for you to look at and give your opinion thereof. And this is apparently, you can't really see it so well, but there you go. What do you think of that? So that's the photograph that somebody took of what they said was a ghost of some kind, but it does look remarkably like a Dementor from Harry Potter. So this is the story surrounding it, and you may take of it as you wish. It happened in Kitwe in 2017, and this strange shaped cloud or apparition formed over the newly opened Makuba Mall. The floating figure had a humanoid shape with head and torso and a tail like end, and as they says, it looks just like a Dementor from the Harry Potter movies, but it appeared for about half an hour and then disappeared it. And it was seen by a great many people, many of whom fled, um, thinking that the end time had finally arrived. Um, Fortunately, um, it seems the end had not arrived. There are a number of comments that say that these stories are not true, and there are a number of people who say that um, they know about it and it definitely was. So it seems there's a certain amount of argument as to whether or not these things are indeed true, but you can make of it as you will. Um, they say that they were seen, whatever it might be, and they were feared. So give your opinion and send in a few comments as to what you think. Now, about the ghosts of Zambia. Well, according to one commentary on it, they say growing up in Zambia in the 1970s and 1980s, scary ghost stories abounded, with people of all ages fearing things, um, and they speak in the 70s of ghosts in the toilets of the schools, as we have indeed encountered that. Hi, hi, hi. Rice has arrived. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure to like, subscribe, join, and more. Now, these are obviously well known stories, particularly because um, they are commented by a number of people. They also speak of the ghost train in Ndola. Yes, that is my town. Um, Ndola was particularly notable for a number of large businesses, and the trains going through there were very, very important. And they speak of things that even I remember being told about, that this train went through Ndola, um, was well known and passed by a lot of townships. But if you looked out the windows, if you were on the train, there was nothing there to see. But um, they mean the window of the house, when you hear the train, that there was nothing there. And they say that there were a great many car accidents, particularly at the railway crossing, where people thought a train was coming, but then there was nothing there. And even I recall being told about stories of the ghost train that people said passed by. Notably, of course, it only passed by at night, which maybe tells you something. What train it was, nobody ever knew, and where it came from, nobody ever knew. Anaya, hey, welcome. Of course, they recall the story of Rosemary Chibanda. That was one I think would never have been told to me because I was too young, and they would not speak to a child of my age about a lady of negotiable affection. But they do recall how she was supposed to be dressed in black with dark sunglasses and a black floppy hat, and many children would never approach a woman if they wore sunglasses because of this story. Um, Now, they also recall an interesting one um, where some people encountered a woman who came screaming through holding a baby and saying that she was being chased by a lion. Now, lions were not uncommon back in the day, and indeed they could hear the sound of the lion coming, but when they turned to check on this lion and possibly defend themselves from it, nothing appeared. And when they turned back, the woman had disappeared. And in fact, later stories speak of the real woman who was in fact killed by a lion, and what they had encountered was the ghost of her. Many thanks for the likes there, Zaps. You have joined us. It's always good to um, have people join. And thanks to Fryce, who has shared our live as well. Do I think the moon landing was fake? You know, I'm going to be honest with you and say that not only do I not know, but I've never actually cared enough about it. Whether or not we arrive on the moon strikes me as being something that is far less worrying than living life here. Hey Lily, I'm doing great. I hope you're doing great too. It's fantastic to have you with us. And yeah, comment lots and tell us what you think about the whole thing. Um, when it comes to conspiracy theories, I've always been far more interested about ones that are more to this world. I'm something of a history nerd in many ways, and particularly because I have discovered that a great many of what things that we take as historical fact has been shown actually to be made up because people particularly want to forward a political agenda. And the way things go historically and stories that are told, I tend to find that it's very much a manipulation. History is written by the victors, as they say, and the real truth is really what you might think. Lily, do I believe in God? Yes, I think there is such a thing as God. Um, and I think that religion is quite an important thing that should be taken seriously. But I also do believe that you cannot believe in a supernatural being like God and not believe in other supernatural things. It sort of goes hand in hand, from my opinion. But in saying that, I would uh, nevertheless wonder at the value or importance of knowing more in terms of the fact that I sort of wonder whether or not we ought to worry about these things or not, and if it is something that matters and why it would matter. So I don't know if that answers you. I hope it does. But the next interesting ghost that we have is, in fact, uh, a ghostly white woman who was strangled by drunken men in Nkushi. She had been beaten to death and strangled by her alcoholic husband in a drunken frenzy, and in turn now, she would go and find drunk men and strangle them, and she wreaked her revenge on drunken farm laborers walking home at night or any other drunken men she came across. Now, I did mention that by and large, the ghosts reported in Zambia are very much vengeful, and they don't like men. I wonder if there is good reasoning behind that. Now, Ndola, of course, has two haunted houses, um, which is quite interesting in that regard. There were two male ghosts in Kansenshi house. One was a white guy and one was a black guy, and both ghosts were known to look after the place and do house chores and clean the house. And it appears that they had been there in life and they carried on in death, doing exactly the same thing. However, we can't, of course, just have a nice and chill ghost. So, hi to Chill. There's a coincidence for you. And hi to Romy. Welcome, welcome. But this particular uh, white guy was said to appear behind you if you went to shave in the bathroom and would wield a cutthroat razor. Both ghosts became increasingly violent, and anyone that lived in the houses eventually ran away. And in fact, this particular guy says when he lived in Ndola, the houses were derelict and nobody would live there. Now, in Lusaka, there's a haunted house opposite the Fairview Hotel, and the Evelyn Hone College that is now a reproductive health clinic. It was originally a government house assigned to the police. Apparently, a senior police officer shot himself in the house and has remained there haunting it. And as we know from many of our examinations of ghosts, suicide is a prime way to get a ghost because of the tragedy and emotion involved in that. Now, stories change as it gets told as to whether or not the policeman was a white guy or a black guy. Um, but the house, everybody agreed, was declared haunted, and family after family fled the house when they got allocated it. Eventually, it became a camp for the paramilitary police. And nowadays, it has been turned into a clinic. And they say, I wonder if anybody works late at that clinic because they've never heard if the ghost had been exorcised or if it was still there. Now, as we know, if you're looking for ghosts, primary locations include hospitals, battlefields, and sanatoriums, and roads. And our next one is on the Kafue Road. First one is a woman with a baby on the back who runs across the road late at night, and the advice given is just keep going. You can't run her over. She is just a ghost, and to brake or swerve would mean you would end up with a major accident. It seems that this ghost again was after revenge after she had been killed by a hit and run driver. So again, yeah, absolutely got that going for them. Then there are three young men in a Mercedes, which is very specific. It's apparently there was a tragic accident on the way home from the airport after arriving in Lusaka from the UK. and it is alleged that they now drive the Cuffway Road and will pick up hitchhikers. But of course, as I have said, all the ghosts in that are reported, at least, of in Zambia are angry ones. So the story doesn't end there. Indeed, no, because if you got picked up by these young men in the Mercedes, you would end up being found later on dead. Now, the next interesting one, which caused quite a serious panic in Lusaka and which caused the sale of beer to drop severely and indeed seemed to have almost cured people of any prostitution, um, was a real life nighttime threat, and it was not a clergyman. Indeed, no, it was the Lusaka Strangler who killed over 30 women in a 9 month period. He turned Lusaka's nightlife into a non event as everybody went home early. Nurses at the UTH had to be brought to work under armed escort as they refused to brave the streets of Lusaka after dark if they were on night duty. Um, and this actually, while it is not a haunting, uh, absolutely did happen. And it was a terrifying time when the Lusaka Strangler was busy, and they never caught him or figured out why. There were also stories which may be true. We are going to hold our opinion on that, but there was some evidence that it might have occurred in some places, and this is the tales of the organ stealers. And it went round every town or city that there was a gang who kidnapped people and harvested their organs for use in witchcraft rituals or possibly for sale. Now, we know that there are genuine events that uh, show that this does happen, and it's happened in more than just Zambia. I know of cases that the police had to investigate in South Africa as well. Um, but none of these organ thieves were ever caught, so the stories continue to linger. There was always one prominent businessman who was allegedly the ringleader of these cruel killers and harvesters of livers, hearts, kidneys, and brains, and children would flee from the sight of people if they drove a car because um, it was said that they were the ones. And he says that these days my 7-year-old son can stay up late at night alone playing video games, which is an incredible thing to behold because when I was that age, I was scared stiff, he says, that there is something out there ready to grab you and drag you off into the night. And he says that bedwetting was quite an epidemic because some of the stories were so terrifying that no child would get up to go to the toilet in case that they were grabbed. Um, and he says, is it that the ghosts and goblins have disappeared, or were we just more superstitious? Well, who's to say? I suppose that the only answer to that is we have no idea. But as we progress with our stories, um, we are going to talk now on some of the cryptids as well. Then there are quite a few on hand for the the pleasure of terrifying you that Zambia can offer us, and they include a number of things. Now, just to remind you guys, a cryptid is a creature that many believe does exist, but of which there is no scientific proof necessarily. And the first cryptid that we are going to mention is the Chipekwe, which is associated with freshwater habitats like the Banguelulu wetlands or the Kafue Flats. It's described as a large horned amphibious creature, sometimes called a water rhinoceros, and it's thought to be similar to the uh, Emelantuka or possibly the Mkole Mbembe. The term Chipekwe is also sometimes used to refer to various other water monsters as well. However, we also have the Isikukumadevu. Yeah, my Bemba is not very good. We also have the Insanga, the Nyami Nyami, which is, of course, absolutely world famous. The Kongamatu and the Itoshi and more. And we will get into these a bit more detail and tell you what they say. So Chipekwe, which is our first, has been reported to have been seen particularly around the Bangueulu wetlands and the Kafue Flats, and other lakes and rivers at the source of the River Congo. It's said to be a horned pachyderm or water rhinoceros. What does the word mean? It means a water monster, which might seem vague but otherwise very, very fitting. But it does mean that it refers also to another set of creatures as well. Now, the first time that it was reported outside of Zambia to other peoples than locals was at the turn of the 20th century in what became northern Rhodesia and then Zambia. It was still known as northeastern and northwestern Rhodesia at the time. Zambia, once it gained independence, of course. So the Chipekwe was described for the first time in 1907 as a mythical hippo-eating water rhinoceros native to Lake Chirengwa on the Kafue Flats. Shortly afterwards, the British administrator and hunter, Chauncey Stigand, decided to find out more about it, and he is the first one to actually record such a creature. The best known early accounts are associated with the German explorer Hans Schomburg, who lived from 1880 to 1967, and his employer Karl Hagenbeck. Upon arriving at Lake Bangueulu, Schomburg discovered that hippopotamuses were rare in the marshes, despite being an ideal habitat for them. Local people told him that hippos avoided the area because of this creature that killed and possibly fed on them. Initially, he took this story to be absolute rubbish, but changed his mind after hearing other accounts of what we can refer to as neo-dinosaurs. He also heard stories of unknown Rhodesian lake animals, which he added to his accounts, and they interested Hagenbeck, who outfitted an expedition to try and find this creature, but was unsuccessful. But he received accounts later on from Lake Tanganyika. And judging by what he put together, he eventually came to the conclusion that this horned water rhino or some such was clearly some kind of a last remnant dinosaur that people had seen around and could be nothing else. Um, However, at the same time, a big game hunter, Owen Letcher, was collecting reports of the Chimpokwe, and again they had the same description. His came from the Awisa people, and he gave an account of it in 1911, um, but it doesn't say if he actually managed to see it himself, despite the number of stories that were given. Now, it is said that this particular creature had 3 horns, if that makes any particular difference. Um, and it was seen by a lot of different people. 1925, that it was seen again, um, which obviously made the rounds and told a lot of people. 1935, Dennis Lyle also described seeing a creature hippo-sized with horns on its face like a rhino, but in the water. And then Chirupula Stevenson, the famous Rhodesian pioneer, 2 years later after Lysel, also included a chapter on the Chipekwe in his book of stories about African history. So it seems that a great many people claimed to have seen it. Whether or not they really did, who is to say? But it's one of those creatures that is what I would call a prehistoric memory by and large, where something that could well have existed is remembered and is woven into the stories of various people. Hey there to Just Me and the Crazy Kiddo. Now, the last time that this creature is said to have been seen was in the 1970s, when an informant, Peter, of Sergei Koilik, claimed to have seen this creature in Lake Bangweulu. But again, if that is or isn't true, it's the word of the one man. So maybe it was there and maybe it wasn't. But there you go, a water rhino. The next interesting creature that we are going to talk about as we go along is going to be that of the Isikukumadevu, which, as you can imagine, is a hard one to pronounce, also known as Lingongole. Now, this one is reported to exist in the Zambezi Basin wetlands, particularly in and around the Lozi Kingdom of Barotseland, and in the vicinity, as I promised, of Victoria Falls, a long-necked neo-dinosaur often compared with Mokole-mbembe, and is reported much further south than many of that type of cryptid ever is. The stories of this creature were even mentioned back in the day by David Livingstone, which they say is big enough to catch a canoe and hold it motionless. Um, what exactly was it? Well, the descriptions of it essentially um, is that it's something like the Loch Ness Monster, quite literally, that it is one of those things that turns up in a great many cultures and cultures and countries that are utterly unrelated in any way, but the descriptions come up as being almost exactly the same, which is very interesting indeed. Um, so if you've ever encountered Nessie, then you know what I'm talking about. It's a being of colossal size, taller than a man, with a snake like head on a long neck and a gigantic body with lizard like legs. Um, there was a pharaoh seen by King Lewanika uh, that was reportedly about as wide as a Boer wagon with the wheels removed, so about nearly 5 foot. It is amphibious and dwells in swamps and rivers, moving on its belly when on land. It's supposedly drawn to canoe occupants um, and will tear out the banks near villages, which sometimes causes them to be flooded. There are a great many stories of people who claim to have seen it. The last particular one was in the 1960s that we have record of. That was by E.C. Saunders, the director of the Katombora Reformatory, which saw the creature in the Zambezi River, some 50 miles downstream from the Victoria Falls, um, at 11 a.m. in January 1960. He was supervising the construction of a causeway near the Reformatory, and he noticed what he initially took for a long tree trunk near some rapids, but as he observed it, he noticed that it was moving against the current, and then it rose out of the water for several seconds before sinking down again. He estimated that the animal had been between 9 and 12 feet in diameter, uh, and a cobra-like head, thinner than the body, uh, could be seen. He said that he thought the animal would have been about 20 to 25 feet long, and that 8 of his workmen claimed to have seen larger specimens of the same animal. So apparently, this is something that is a known creature along that part of Zambia. I wonder how true it is and what it might mean. But as we progress along, we must now speak of Nsanga. Now, what is Nsanga? Nsanga is a cryptid from, again, the wetlands of Zambia. It is a smooth-skinned aquatic reptile. Um, and exactly what that might mean or be is not sure, but it was reported first by Lieutenant Friedrich Paul Greitz in 1909, who crossed Africa's waterways by motorboat, passing through the Bangwe Ulu region, where he stayed for 3 months. And local people told him about these things, and he claimed to have obtained some strips of skin from one such creature. Um, but what happened to them is not known. But it is said to be a large lizard with smooth skin, a kind of degenerate saurian, some would say, almost like a crocodile, but smooth and scaleless. It's said to inhabit water places, swamps, marshes, and such, and is much feared by the locals. Um, what exactly it might be is not sure, but it's there, it's big, and it will bite you. And locals insist it is absolutely not a crocodile, which they know well, um, but rather that it is more like a giant monitor lizard, which seems fair enough. We know such large things do exist, so it's not unreasonable. Now, of course, we come on to the most famous cryptid of all, and I would argue that um, it rivals Nessie for fame. And I speak, of course, of the Nyami Nyami, which is absolutely famous, known also as the Zambezi River God or the Zambezi Snake Spirit. It's well known around the world. Um, in fact, I even own, now that I think about it, um, somewhere I have a necklace with Nyami Nyami on it. So it's definitely a known thing. It's a coiled snake. It's always depicted as such in carvings, with a large, slightly horse-like head, um, and very large teeth. And it is one of the most important gods along for the peoples of the Zambezi River area. And it is believed to protect the people and give them sustenance in difficult times. Um, it's usually portrayed as male for some reason. Um, it has the body of a snake, the head of a fish, um, and it lives in a whirlpool. And it is some kind of river dragon. It can also appear as a whirlpool, for that matter. Um, it is said that before the creation of the Kariba Dam, he was the god of the whole river there, and is very dragon-like in that regard. Um, it's popularly made into pendants that many people wear, and it's not just a fashion accessory, but rather it brings a great deal of good luck to own such things, and often elaborately carved walking sticks um, are considered important and are used as gifts to prestigious visitors to offer them the protection of Nyami Nyami. So, yeah, absolutely. Again, you have a large cryptid, semi divine, and we know that creatures like this certainly do exist. In fact, funnily enough, we have a version thereof that lives in the waterfall right where I live now. So stories go all over Africa of creatures like this, but this is the most famous one of all. Um, so, as you can imagine, it's quite important. The next interesting one that we've got is one we have, in fact, encountered in a couple of other places, and specifically in our last live in Papua New Guinea. And this is the Kongamato. And the short story of it, if you will, is that it's some form of pterodon. Now, if you're a knower of your dinosaurs, you know exactly what that implies. It's a very large proto bird that's more reptile than it is bird, that can glide or fly on its large membranous wings with a long thin tail with a spear point to the end. And they are really quite large, or they were said to be. And this particular one, uh, which is called Kongamato, which means the breaker of boats, is a dangerous bird-like reptile, not afraid to attack large animals, boats, and people. Uh, and in fact, it is a creature common to Zambia, Angola, and the Congo. And the short story of this particular creature is that it is almost certainly a dinosaur that people have remembered seeing. And despite what a lot of people have said in the past, there is sufficient proof these days that dinosaurs still exist when people were around. So having them become cryptids in this day and age is unsurprising. Now, our next one is the Itoshi. And the Itoshi, of course, is an interesting creature. It comes again from the Kafue River, and it is the other version, if you will, just like the Chipekwe, of Nessie, large aquatic dinosaur creature, long tail, long thin neck, with a snake-like head, and a large fat body. And this is Nessie again, explained in different ways, but nevertheless, and very, very likely it is again a memory of. Now, stories like these are fairly common in a number of different cultures and more, and we know that in fact many of such stories are actually fairly logical, though they've become myth in that regard. So there is that to be said about it. Um, we can, of course, say that in terms of such things, the ghosts fit exactly to what we have discovered thus far, though very, very vengeful and quite violent in Zambia, which is quite interesting. Um, so, absolutely important in that regard. The interesting part for me is that I would have said that in terms of Zambia would be an absolutely perfect environment for a Bigfoot like creature. Um, and yet they have no such legends whatsoever, which I find very interesting. Um, and one wonders why. Uh, I do not have an answer for that one. They also don't seem to worry too much in terms of um, therianthropes at all, which again is interesting. But then I suppose when you have a sufficiency of large dinosaurs, you don't need much more than that. So perhaps uh, they have enough to keep them busy in that regard. I do know that by and large, all of the Zambians that I know are very chilled people, and they don't worry about too many things, to be honest. Um, they're a wonderful people, very friendly, and very chilled. So there's not a lot that will really bring them to too much concern, but the ghosts absolutely. I do know that all the Zambians that I know are particularly scared of ghosts. Um, maybe it's a thing in the way that they were raised. Um, Maybe I'm a throwback because, of course, I was born there and I'm not worried about ghosts at all. So you may make of that or take of that as you wish. Hey, Miss, and welcome to all of you who have just joined in. I can say that part of the Zambian attitude might well be because it is a lovely and easy uh, country to live in. Hey, Em, it's one of those places where you can grow things by dropping something on the ground, quite literally. And I will tell you a genuine story because it happened to my father. To give you an idea of how fertile the land in Zambia is, he went. He decided to put a fence around our property where we lived there, and it was just before the rainy season. He went and bought a whole lot of um, creosote-soaked posts and planted them around the property, ready to put the fence on. But then the rainy season hit. There are only two seasons in Zambia. It's either hot or it's wet. And when it gets wet, um, it absolutely gets severely wet, which is really quite delightful, but it makes everything grow. Hey, Sarul, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Achma. Nice, nice, nice.
Glad to hear it. So, how much do you know about Zambia?
I lived there for a while.
Then you'll be able to confirm that it's one of the most fertile countries you can be in.
I
Um,
don't know. I got to go.
okay, cool, cool. Um, so he had the posts set in, but no wire on them. And the rainy season came, and it rains hard in the rainy season. And at the end of the rainy season, he went round to check on the posts and see about putting the wire on, and they had started to sprout. So, yeah, incredibly fertile country where you can grow virtually anything easily. So maybe that gives you an idea of the chill nature of Zambians and why perhaps the only thing that you ever really need to worry about is angry ghosts. And let's be honest, the ones that they have are particularly angry for some reason. Why would that be? I do not know. But yeah, they go for the angry ones in that regard. Now, where have we got to in our searchings? Okay, so here is where we stand today. It would appear that pretty much every culture in the world um, has ghost stories. And by and large, the majority view is ghosts certainly do exist. What they are and why they are may change in people's opinions, but nevertheless, it seems that everybody does agree there is something out there that goes bump in the night. Um, by and large, the major consensus is that a ghost is the spirit of a deceased person, and that it's mostly unnatural, that it should not happen. You're supposed to die and move on to wherever you go. And 99% of people do exactly that. The few that remain are the ghosts we encounter. We have established that there are varying grades or strengths of ghosts, and it takes a certain amount of energy for a ghost even to manifest, much less be able to um, do anything to the physical world. And the lowest grade, if you will, would be that of an orb, a light that appears that many associate with the supernatural and paranormal, and which seems to be a ghost that just cannot actually form a proper form, if you will. You then get the ghosts that are echoes, which you might be able to see, but they cannot interact with you or you with them. They repeat the same thing over and over and over, and that is all that they are. The next version or level, which may be good or bad, are those that can vary what they do. They can be interacted with, whether they are benevolent or malevolent varies, but they can be seen, heard, and sometimes can do things, even moving objects and more. And sometimes you can even talk to them. And then, of course, you get the highest level of ghost, which is the one that we are particularly concerned about, where they are not only able to affect the physical world, but they are angry and want to harm. And of course, many in our examination of the ghosts of Zambia have fit that category. They are absolutely angry, they are absolutely wanting vengeance. So we've got that going. We have established one new thing. We've been told that ghosts cannot pass through glass. Why, we don't know. And now we've got another one, that ghosts do not like cigarette smoke. They don't tell us what kind or what it is that people might be smoking that they particularly dislike, but it seems that, at least in Zambia, they say ghosts will avoid those who are smoking. So maybe it's the one good thing of taking up smoking. I don't know. You'd have to make a guess on that one. But besides that, we have noted that it is claimed, at least, from more than one religion, that holy objects will hold them off. And at least so far, any still blessed and functional church of any religion we have encountered that has some kind of a ghost only has benevolent ones, not anything malevolent. So perhaps there is some truth to holy objects working. We are told salt also affects them, and the use of burning certain herbs. And maybe that ties in to the smoking idea, because we know a great many traditions and religions will use smudging of varying things to drive off the negative. Holy oils, holy waters, and more is supposed to assist against such things. So, don't know. Who's to say? But one story which I haven't found proper reasoning for is that, by and large, ghosts almost always appear at night. There are one or two small exceptions, but by and large, it's nighttime only, and that doesn't give us a good reason as to why. They also say that most ghosts are either stuck to a place or to an object or to a person. And in that way, you generally will not find them moving much. But on occasion, they might. Don't know. In my personal experience, that is consistent, that there has to be a thing or a place. So we'll take it at that. We've got a comment that's popped up there that says, or retired. I don't know what that means. Give us more on the comment, if you will, Kusi. But yeah, so that seems to be where things go with ghosts. In terms of cryptids, every place has their own particular ones. They seem to fit to specific categories whereby they're either stories made up to warn particularly children not to do certain things or go certain places, or they are clearly what I would call a prehistoric memory of a creature that nowadays probably is extinct, but in its day would have existed and has remained in memory. And then you get a couple that are just weirdly common in a lot of places, which makes it very difficult to explain. So, Bigfoot, of course, is one. The Loch Ness Monster is another, as we've found there are literally two versions of it in Zambia that are spoken of. Though no Bigfoot in Zambia for some reason. So we have that going for us. And then something which also did not turn up in Zambia at all are tales of creatures that fit to what we have taken to calling the jinn. It seems that there is no particular view that any such creature exists at all. So you may again make of that as you will. So perhaps it doesn't exist in Zambia. Maybe that makes Zambia a good place to be, as it is safer. I don't know. You'll have to give comment on that and explain what you think. But that is the end of our live for tonight. We have examined all that we can, and it's been pretty enjoyable too. So thanks to all who stuck with it and who've been a part of it. I hope you have an amazing and wonderful evening, and keep warm. But as we say every time, have a great sleep. Sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open, because you never know what might be out there. And sometimes you might find it safer to keep a holy object near at hand, because those things that go bump in the night might just go bump for you. Good night.